I wanted to play Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core to answer one question that was on my mind and I think many other gamers' minds. Is it necessary to play Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core before playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? It's a question that's been asked a million times in Google searches and in Reddit forums, and I've read the answers, but of course, I needed to find out for myself. And now I'm going to answer that question for you. Now, to give you a quick little backstory, I completed the original Final Fantasy VII on the OG PlayStation 1 when it first came out back in September 1997. And it was such a special experience that it still lives in my memory today, much like the first time I played Super Mario 64 or Zelda Ocarina of Time back in the day. Then I completed Final Fantasy VII Remake on the PS5 and was literally in awe of Square Enix's modern-day recreation of Midgar. It was everything I had hoped it could be and more. Immediately after completing Final Fantasy VII Remake, I could not wait for its sequel, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which of course comes out on February 29th. And now, 60 hours later, I've not only completed Crisis Core, but I also obtained the Platinum Trophy. So without further ado, let's dive into the review. When kicking off a game review, I always talk about the story first, and that's going to be no different here. But I'm going to tread very carefully here to make sure there are no spoilers. For fans of Final Fantasy VII, the story of Crisis Core is absolutely necessary. When Final Fantasy VII released on PS1, it came on 3 CDs. Alternatively, if Final Fantasy VII was, say, a 3-book novel, and Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core was a spin-off book, then I would tell you that it's absolutely 100% required reading. Now, does this mean you can't play Remake or Rebirth without playing Crisis Core? Well, I can't say just yet with 100% certainty because Rebirth has yet to come out. So I don't know how the story will blend with Rebirth, but after completing Crisis Core and seeing how the story plays out, my intuition tells me that if you want the full-on Final Fantasy VII experience, then this is the way.
This is the way.
And I'm not the only one who feels that way. To quote the director of Final Fantasy VII, he stated, "If Crisis Core Reunion is played in between Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, it would really enhance everyone's experience of this entire remake project," said Yoshinori Kitase. So again, without giving away any spoilers, I am going to read to you the basis of the story provided by Square Enix themselves. They state the story begins 7 years before the events of Final Fantasy VII and follows Zack Fair, a young and ambitious Shinra soldier operative. Zack is tasked with tracking down a missing soldier first-class operative named Genesis. But as his adventure unfolds, he discovers the dark secrets of Shinra's experiments and the monsters they create. The game features a number of characters from the Final Fantasy VII franchise, such as Cloud, Sephiroth, Aerith, and others. This just came to me, but I think the best way to describe and validate the story of Crisis Core is to say that it very much reminds me of how Star Wars Rogue One had a great story to tell that led us perfectly into the original Star Wars A New Hope. Now, diving into the gameplay of Crisis Core, I would say that it very much feels like Final Fantasy VII Remake, especially with the combat. So if you enjoyed the combat in Final Fantasy VII Remake, you are going to feel right at home with Crisis Core, but there's more to it than that. So Crisis Core created a very interesting combat system called a DMW, or Digital Mind Wave, though it's rarely referred to in its full unabbreviated name. Much has been said about the DMW system, and let me just say that I thought it was pretty freaking awesome. Now, at first, it might be a lot to wrap your head around, but in reality, it's just a slot machine-like system that runs in the upper left corner of the screen during combat. Just like a normal slot machine in real life, it's good when all 3 slots have matching numbers or pictures, but there's really not much you can do to determine that outcome outside of equipping a special type of summon materia, which can improve the odds of the slots landing on a specific summon materia. For example, if you equip the Moogle summon materia, odds are that the Moogle picture will appear more often on the DMW, aka the slot machine, allowing you to activate the Moogle summon. It may sound confusing, but I want you to know, coming from an older gamer who grew up on the regular Nintendo, who's going to be 40 years old pretty soon here, that it's not confusing at all. And what you as the player is really going to be focusing on is the story and combat. In many ways, this plays just like Final Fantasy VII. You still collect and level up materia, you still level up your character, etc. If anything, I want you to know that I thought the DMW system was really cool, and I had no problems understanding it. Just remember that you're not in complete control of it, so don't focus on things that you can't control, right? Okay, on to the graphics department. Now remember, this is a full-on remake of a PSP title, PlayStation Portable, not a remaster. So graphically, I thought the game was quite stunning, much in the same way I felt about Final Fantasy VII Remake. So Crisis Core not only plays like Final Fantasy VII Remake, but looks and feels like an extension of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, Crisis Core is available on a handful of platforms from Switch, PS4, Xbox, PS5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC. Now, I played the game on my PS5, and I was equally impressed by its graphics in the same way I was when I played Final Fantasy VII Remake. The game's environments and character models looked great to me. Now, if you've seen some of the games I've reviewed on this channel, you will know that I am by no means a graphics snob, and if you are, that's okay. I grew up on the NES, so to me, a lot of the games that come out today, I think look pretty fantastic, and ultimately, graphics is just one piece of the game's pie, so to speak, which leads me to another piece of the pie, and that's the game's sound. Now, Final Fantasy and music go hand in hand. Most Final Fantasy games have extremely memorable soundtracks, with tons of different songs and character themes playing throughout the game, and for the most part, Crisis Core is no different. Many of its themes were stuck in my head long after putting the controller down, and to me, that's always a sure sign of a great soundtrack. Now, is it the best the series has to offer? No, I wouldn't say that, but it's still quite memorable, and you can look forward to hearing some classic character themes in Crisis Core 2, but I won't say anything more about that in order to avoid any type of spoilers. So, maybe asking, who is this game for? Now, before playing the game, this was one of the bigger questions I was looking forward to answering. Is it for hardcore fans of Final Fantasy VII only? Are all Final Fantasy VII fans considered to be pretty hardcore? Is it for JRPG fans or action-based RPG fans? Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that it's for all of the above. If you enjoy the RPG genre in general, no matter the variety it comes in, I think there's something for everyone to enjoy here. If you enjoy the story aspect of RPGs, or the soundtracks that are accompanied by them, or you enjoy the grind and leveling and finding new weapons, items, and accessories in an RPG, I mean, it's all there. But if I were to really zero in on who needs to play this game, it's all fans of Final Fantasy VII And really, anyone who plans on playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, you have to play this. Now, jumping into the game's content, let me just start off by saying that I wasn't expecting this much content. Now, like most RPGs, you don't have to do all of the game's content to see the final credits. But if I'm enjoying the game, I'm going to want to see and do everything, because why wouldn't I, right? And so as I mentioned at the start of this review, I got the Platinum Trophy, and to get the Platinum Trophy, you see and do everything in the game. And let me just say again, it was not my plan to get a Platinum Trophy. I was just having so much fun. I'm like, I need to see everything here. Now, maybe because it was a PSP game, I didn't expect it to be this chock full of content. But of course, I was pleasantly surprised and appreciated every bit of it. Now, on top of making your way through the game's chapters, there's 300 missions to complete throughout the game. And in each mission, you're going to be looking for item containers spread throughout the mission's map that house all kinds of great items. From your basic potions and elixirs, maybe a phoenix down, to materia and materia items you can use to give your materia bonus stats, to accessories and armor. And before you start each mission, the mission menu tells you what the main reward is. So it's in the player's best interest to play through all the missions in order to get the very best equipment, and you're going to need it if you plan on completing mission number 966. Again, I won't give any spoilers, but if you are able to defeat this boss as I did on hard mode, you deserve a badge of honor. And if you have beat the boss on hard mode, definitely leave a comment and let me know. Now, when it comes to difficulty, guys, I think difficulty scaled really well as long as you are playing through the missions as you make your way through the story. Before you start each mission, you know what you're getting yourself into, because each mission comes with a star difficulty scale from 1 to 10 stars that you can see before you choose to begin the mission. If you start the mission and you die pretty quickly, well, you know then that you need to either level up, possibly equip some different armor, or equip different spell-based materia that the enemies have a weakness to. For example, if you start a mission and the first 2 enemy encounters are using lightning-based spell attacks that rapidly deplete your health, you'd be wise to equip some sort of lightning amulet to either lessen, nullify, or even absorb the damage. Like any good RPG, some missions might feel really daunting, and the first thing you might think is, man, I'm like way under leveled, but that's not always the case. If you have the right equipment, and as long as you complete the missions and make it a point to obtain all the item boxes in each mission, then chances are you'll always have what you need somewhere in your inventory of accessories. Now, let's talk about Crisis Core's grinding. So if you couldn't tell, yes, the game has plenty of grinding. There's 300 missions, the main chapters, and some side quests, and there's also mini games too, because what kind of Final Fantasy game would it be without mini games? But as long as you play through all the missions, you're not going to have to grind a whole lot more. I did do some additional grinding to obtain more SP for materia fusion, which is something I won't get into in this review, but it's exactly what it sounds like, guys. You can infuse 2 materia together to create a new type of materia, a higher level materia, or you can add one specific stat to the new materia. For example, I could take the Dispel and Thundara materia to create Dark Thundara, which is a stronger materia. Or I could take, say, 2 Cure materias to create another Cure materia, but now since I'm creating a new one, I can add materia items to that could give me, say, an additional 50% HP. You can literally infuse materias to give Zack up to HP 999%. or you can choose to add an attack boost, defense boost, etc. It's all up to you, and by completing all the missions, you will find all the materia item boost, so you can create the strongest materia. If you watched my review for Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince on Switch, it reminds me of the monster synthesis, although not as extensive, and we're talking about materia, not monsters, but it very much felt like the same premise. Okay, let's talk about the game's pacing. Does it end too soon or overstay its welcome? Well, after playing it for 60 hours, it still felt just right. I think if you plow through the story and don't do much of the missions, then you might feel like the game ends a little too fast. But I think that could be said for most games, right? Like if you play, say, Assassin's Creed or even God of War, and you do none of the side missions, then it's going to be over a lot sooner, right? Well, I'll give you another example. If you play Super Mario 64 and you obtain the minimum 70 out of 120 stars to beat the game, then yes, you might feel like the game ended too soon. But this is an RPG with a huge story to tell that is part of the overall Final Fantasy VII lore, so naturally, I think you would want to see and do everything. And so if you follow that formula, then the pacing is just right, guys. Now to talk about the game's emotion and charm, I'm going to go back to that original reference of Star Wars Rogue One to A New Hope. When I watched A New Hope as a kid, there were so many questions I had at the start of the movie. Like, why did Darth Vader board Princess Leia's ship? And why did he suspect Leia had the plans to destroy the Death Star? How did a princess obtain those plans? Did she steal them? Did somebody else? Did she hire someone to steal them? I don't know, but watching the beginning of A New Hope, you kind of feel like a lot of shit went down right before the movie started, right? And then Episode 3 comes out, Revenge of the Sith, and we still don't know what happened before the start of Episode 4. But then Rogue One was created to answer all those questions. And it was extremely satisfying to know what happened before the events of A New Hope. And to me, that's exactly what it felt like here, honestly. And almost like you got to be a fly on Shinra's wall and learn all about the who, what, where, when, and why of Final Fantasy VII. Like, how did these events lead up to it? And so the feeling I had playing Crisis Core is truly the same feeling I felt when I watched Rogue One in the theater. I never expected to hear the backstory to Final Fantasy VII, and so playing Crisis Core makes the story of Final Fantasy VII that much better. Now, if you're wondering what the game's replayability is like, well, I think it will depend on how you choose to play the game. Crisis Core does have a new Game Plus mode, but not everything is going to carry over that you earned in your first playthrough. For example, all the missions, shops, materia expansions, equipment expansions, key items, your DMW characters, and your mail will not carry over. But Zack's level, XP, SP, guild items, accessories, materia, and DMW completion progress, and a few other things will carry over. Now, I chose to see and do everything in one playthrough, but if you want to try and blow through the game just to take in the story before Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out, with the intention to later go back and see and do everything else in, say, a new Game Plus mode, I would say that's not a bad idea at all. Did I have fun playing this game? Well, what do you guys think? Would I spend 60 hours on a game and get the Platinum Trophy if I was having a bad time? The answer to that is absolutely not. I had a total blast playing Crisis Core. There was a few days last week where I literally played for 14 hours in one sitting. It was actually quite addicting, but in a super positive way, because I was really enjoying this story play out and connecting the dots with Final Fantasy VII's story. Now, performance-wise, guys, Crisis Core runs at a silky smooth 60 frames per second on PS5 and looks quite spectacular considering this is a PSP game. Performance-wise, there's actually no graphics performance options for Crisis Core, unlike Final Fantasy VII Remake, which had a few options to choose from. One thing to note, which I thought was kind of cool and even nostalgic, is that some of the FMV scenes are reused and rescaled from the PSP, and you can totally tell. So you may think, wow, these FMV scenes look old, but in my opinion, they look good because they are FMV assets. FMV cutscenes for summons have been remade, and those scenes look amazing. So if you're wondering why some FMV scenes look amazing and some look like they were made a few generations ago, well, there's your answer, guys. Now, to wrap it up, I didn't know what to expect with Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, but that was in big part my own choice to go into the game blindly. I knew that its story would somehow lend to Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, but to what extent and in what way I didn't know. But after playing the game, I would have never have guessed how much I actually needed this story. And now that I've beaten it, I would have been disappointed in myself if I didn't play Crisis Core before Rebirth, or if I skipped Crisis Core entirely thinking that it's just a spin-off game that I don't really need to play. Director Katase said it, and now I'm going to say it again. If Crisis Core Reunion is played in between Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, it would really enhance everyone's experience of this entire remake project. So if you're wondering if you need to play Crisis Core to fully enjoy Rebirth, I hope I've answered that question for you, because 60 hours later, I know I've answered it for myself. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. Please leave a comment, like the video. I want to know what you thought about Crisis Core. Did my review make you want to play Crisis Core? And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe, as it helps me out a ton. Thank you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. What's up, guys? If you enjoyed this video, please smash the like button, as it helps me out a ton. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. Over here to the left, you can find all my social media info, or just remember to search for ThunderSteve85. As always, thank you guys for tuning in, and remember, you're never too old to play video games.